Welcome to Leaving the Lies and Speaking Your Truth. Today is an extra special, I guess you would say, show, because in the very beginning, when we first started this, we interviewed this brilliant young man. Okay, you're young to me, Brandon.
Yes.
And today we are going to help him get the story out about the book, Poison into Medicine. It is an amazing read. It is an easy read. It is an intriguing read. I suggest that everybody run out and buy it. Poison into Medicine by B.W. Salo. Did I say that correct?
Yes, yes, you did. And thank you so much for those unbearably kind words.
Of course. Mel, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm hot. It's 32 degrees and I am burning up hot.
Well, that doesn't seem to coincide.
I know.
We were -5 this morning, but I think we're up to 23 now, so I'm good.
And where in the world is Brandon?
Right now I'm in Spain.
Gosh. I need your passport.
Yeah, well, I had to get a new one with new pages because the last one got filled up with stamps. So
Need your passport. All right. Let's do this. Let's get this seller.
Yes.
Let's be one seller.
So we're going to start out with the first question is, Brandon, how long did it take you to actually write your book?
So, towards the end of 2014, when I was staying with the Coleman family in New York, and that I do write about in the book, there was a period of time, roughly about 2.5 months, where I just started writing a lot. And a lot of what I was writing had to do primarily with Eastern philosophy and Buddhism, and basically discovering self-truths and just putting it down on paper, invoking those truths, which is a part of Buddhism. I don't claim to be a Buddhist, but I do practice things that are very similar to Buddhism in my life. And there was this moment where I was talking to Mike Coleman one evening, and I can't remember exactly what the conversation was about, but something clicked within me, and I knew that I was ready to write this story. And I had tried before, but I knew that I was ready to write this story. So when I started writing it, I believe in February of 2015, maybe it was the end of January in 2015, I started writing about 500 to 1,000 words every day on average, and I wrote about 95% of the content in about 3 months. So I finished the majority of the content in August. I believe it was the beginning of August. Yeah, so maybe it was a little bit more. I took like maybe like a month or month and a half hiatus from it because my father died during writing the book, which I do write about in the book. But I finished the book while traveling. I was in Istanbul when I finished the book. And so then it kind of got set aside because the whole purpose of the book at that time was to give my siblings, my half siblings, an idea of what my childhood was like. It was an effort to give my mother an understanding of what my life was like, and essentially to bring the family closer together. So after I wrote it, the bulk of it on my blog, which is not active at the moment, called Survivor.com. I had talked to a lot of people about the story, and people from all over the world, but of course from English-speaking countries, and they just expressed fascination in the story. And so from there, I got motivated to have the manuscript edited, and then add some other parts, rewrite the introduction so that so that perhaps for those who aren't totally interested in it, excuse me, maybe would find interest through the introduction. So as COVID hit in March, I went back to New York to visit the Colemans, and I thought it would be a nice touch internally, pull on my heartstrings to finish the book where it started. And so essentially that's more or less where it got finished, and then I did all the technical side of things to bring it to physical copy.
Wow. So that's a long process. So when you started, then you knew that you were writing a book. You weren't just journaling and then it turned into a book. You knew what you were doing.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. I've been sharing this book on various support groups, and I am more than happy to give it away to people in these support groups who are curious about it. I think that there are just, at the very least, crumbs of information in there that somebody, can take and, get something out of it.
Well, I think and I've read your book, Brandon, and I will say certainly, I think what it really, to me, offers cult survivors is a way for them to at least start thinking about the process of deconstruction and reconstruction after leaving a cult, because that's a process we all have to go through when we leave. And I think that you actually describe that process quite well, to where especially somebody who's been in a cult can understand what you were going through and how that thought process, how you did that.
Oh, well, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I hope that a lot of people have that experience.
I actually saw it from two different points of view than Mel, and that actually is really great points, Mel. As I was reading it, my husband also read it, and his exact words, and I hadn't thought about it because I was in the fire. Brandon was explaining things in his book, and I could picture it crystal clear, so that's what I mean by in the fire. I had experienced, been in the same, I guess, cult as you is how I would say this. Right. And Philip said, I would have had this book when I first met you, because then I could have been able to know your thought process and what you were going through while having to help you deal and decompress and help you to become the woman you are today. I didn't think of it that way. It was almost like he said it's almost like a manual. He said even though you didn't give any help, he was able to see things from your point of view that was taking place instead of outside the box looking in. The other point that I have to tell you, I admire you for this in your book. You had not the normal relationship with your mother, your father, or your stepmother. And I admire, because I had a tumultuous childhood with my adopted parents and my bio parents. And you're so much younger than me. And the way that you explain and the way that you went through things and the forgiveness and the overall maturity and the love that you expound even at certain parts of the book. And get the book, because I'm not going to tell you what part it is. There is one particular part in this book that I'm listening, or I'm reading to what is taking place between a conversation between your mother and yourself, and there's even one with your stepmother and yourself. And even as you explain it and it's taking place, I can almost feel the compassion in your voice.
Absolutely.
As you do.
Oh, well, and thank you. Those were definitely in my intentions. I did not want to write a book that gave a feeling of resentment. It couldn't have the title of
Oh, you succeeded in that, Brandon.
That. But I did want to just say this is, I tried to say it objectively, what happened, and I'm not saying it's 100% objective. But the reason for all of it is because I believe that we all have a choice to look at any circumstance that we have and say, well, like, how do I want to feel about it? We have the power to decide how we want to feel about something that has happened in the past. The past doesn't necessarily shape the future if we want it to. And if we're the type of individual that continually learns and learns through introspection, I think that we can find very quickly that the past is shaped by the present.
Oh, and I have to agree with Autumn. And I'm going to say, too, that what else you did was you actually were able to put yourself in their shoes. Like you put yourself in your stepmom's shoes, you put yourself in your mother's shoes and said, okay, well, if I were them, how would I handle this, or how would I feel about this happening to me? And you were able to, I think that's what gave you the ability to find the compassion that you had for them, was because you were trying to look at it not only from your own perspective but from multiple perspectives, which gives
I
a
do,
broader view of your story.
yeah, and I do want to say publicly, for everybody who might read this book for help, is that uh, this to be able to do that, it took 10 years of getting over resentment and anger and frustration.
And I'm
It's
glad
not.
to hear you say that, Brandon, because so many
It
people
took a
deal with
while.
those feelings when they come out of a cult. And if they're
Hmm.
seeing you where you're at, they're going to be like, well, why can't I deal with it like this guy? And you're saying, I haven't always been here. It took work to get
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. No, it took a lot of work. It took a lot of, a lot. I went through a lot of struggle, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and but there certainly is light at the end of the tunnel. However, the process will always be a little bit different for everybody. But there are some fundamental things that I did that I think everybody can do, but they just have to do it in their own way, and that's just through introspection, finding honesty and finding self-compassion and self-acceptance and all of these things, and using that to be the catalyst for joy in one's life, and then to move forward.
Awesome. Mel, he has already answered my question. Let's go ahead and move on to yours.
Okay, well, I'm gonna show my copy of the book because it has to do with the cover. We are going to have you kind of explain what the picture in the cover of your book, what the meaning is behind it, because there's a lot of symbolism in that, and I
Mhm.
think it's important to your story, and it's important for people to understand the cover, I think. So I think I'm going to go ahead and let you explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the title poison, I've thought about different titles for this book. I don't think I'll get into those, but the title Poison into Medicine the idea for it came from one of Herbie Hancock's speeches on jazz at Harvard University. He was the first African American in our country or period, to give the Norton lectures. Um, and as a jazz musician, I found it very fascinating. Um, and it's also a term that they use in Buddhism. I believe it's the Soka Gakkai branch of Buddhism in Japan. Um, and he struck a note with me when he described his process of playing music with Miles Davis, in that no matter what note you play in your solo, there's always a way to make that into something beautiful musically. Even if you think you played a wrong note. And he went on to tell this really cool story about when he played the most wrong note at the worst time at the peak of Miles' solo. But Miles didn't judge it, and he just took it and he rolled with it and he turned it into a beautiful musical expression.
Wow.
So I think that for the majority for people in general, which are the majority of people in this world, you just want joy, you want peace, and for those of us who know that well, are always just trying to take things and move things forward. You're standing in a group of people, and somebody says something that may be awkward or inappropriate, but maybe somebody takes that and makes a joke about it, and everybody moves on instead of dwelling on something or
Right.
judging it and calling it what it is. Um, so that's part of it. That's where the words had come from. Now, the concept, there's of the lotus flower, which is on the cover. And the lotus flower is
Oh,
symbolic
I got so much
in
reflection.
Buddhism. Thank you. Yeah, the lotus flower is symbolic in Buddhism, but I would like to give another metaphor, and that's has to do with a tree that's very common in India. It's a tree that yields these very beautiful flowers and that are very aromatic. But because India is so populated and there's a fair amount of pollution and waste, it's not often that these trees are able to grow in what we would consider very fertile soil. And but nonetheless, these trees are able to grow in filth, but yet take that filth and turn it into something very beautiful and very pleasant, so that if somebody wants to walk by and enjoy that aroma or that scenery, that they can. And that's just what the tree does. And so metaphorically, you could say that that tree exudes grace. Now, with the cover, with this image, the lotus flower is this bulb that is deep down in the mud, in a very, very, very dark place. But over time, it is able to transcend from that darkness and extend itself up to the surface and provide light and provide something that's beautiful. So that is ultimately why I chose poison into medicine.
I love
Oh,
the
wow.
title, Brandon, and I think that,
Thank you.
and I certainly can say that, that it's amazing that, because not everybody's able to do it, obviously, that to turn a negative into a positive, and that's basically, I think, very symbolic. Is putting it more simply, obviously, in simple terms, is turning a negative into a positive, and that's what you've done with
Absolutely.
your experience in a cult. You've said, this is what happened to me, and it was not necessarily all good, and it wasn't a good thing, but I made it good.
Yes. Good for you, Brandon. Brandon, who were you thinking would be your target audience as you were writing Poison into Medicine?
Well, as I was writing, I mean, like I said, my only target audience was my family, and of
Wow.
course friends, friends and family. It
Wow.
wasn't until I told that story to many people around the world that I was so encouraged and inclined to make it a solid, finished, published book.
That actually speaks volumes for your character, that you were willing to take time to dive into your past, into the many things that took place to you. And I would like to explain to people, this book is not just about his time in the cult. This book is about his time in the cult, his time as a quote unquote normal teenager, his relationship with his mother, his time in relationship with his father and stepmother, the moving, growing up. I mean, and
Education, traveling, you name it, it's in there.
there was a lot of in the past that you dove into and spoke about so clearly, just to do for just your friends and your family, and that speaks volumes for you, that you were willing to let them in to your personal space just so that they would have a better understanding. And I appreciate the love that you have shown by doing this.
That's a very good
speaks
point,
volumes.
Autumn. I'm glad you brought that. That's a very good point. Yeah.
I mean, I'm proud of you, but of course, you know how I feel about you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Mel?
Okay, so Brandon, this is a little more personal question. If you don't want to answer it, you don't have to. It's personal as far as, okay, when we read the book, we know, because we were in the same cult as you, that you hid the identities of certain people and you didn't expose the names and true identities of other people. Can you kind of explain how you chose, how you did that, how you made those decisions?
Okay, so how I disclosed certain names and kept others under pseudonyms. Well, for certain people in power, you could look at them as political figures, and I would say that they have every right for the world to know what they do. Um, what they do behind their closed doors, I don't know about, and I didn't write about that. I wrote about
Right.
with my direct experience,
Absolutely.
and in certain cases, things that several people had told me that they did in secrecy, such as the bizarre things.
Right.
Well, and
Yeah. Yeah, read the book.
but for some
Yes.
people, but for some people, like I kind of knew them, and I just wanted to protect their privacy. You know,
Gotcha.
um,
I appreciate that.
well, because like they left. They're no
Right.
longer there. They weren't doing, they had no power over people. But if somebody is going to willfully sit in a position of power, well, then you need to be accountable for your actions.
Oh, I love that answer, Brandon.
And
I
so
love it.
that's
So
the ultimate reason why I had no qualms
No, because there's
with
some people that you
saying
did.
specifically who did what.
Yeah, and there's some people you specifically first and last name, not just a first name. You just,
well, I will
this is
tell
who
you
they are.
Yeah.
this. Mel got the copy first. She was reading
Hmm.
it. Mel likes to take her time with things. I got the copy and I started devouring it. I don't take my time with anything. I want to know it all and I don't stop until it's done. With chocolate and reading, my two number one things. So I got to the part on the elder. Keep in mind, Brandon, he was a very good friend of ours growing up. I called her, Melody. He mentions such and such his name. She was like, what? Where are you at? And then the only other person that Melody, and I remember this crystal clear because I was doing dishes and we were going back and forth, Samantha.
Hmm.
We went back
Yeah.
and forth, back and forth. And I do
Yeah.
believe I guessed. Then Melody did a little bit more thinking, and then she was like, "Ooh, I think you're right." Brandon, I'm not going to lie to you. Her and I immediately went to the source and said, "Are you Samantha?" You can't
Yeah,
get too
I
nosy
even
people
asked
like that.
I even asked Samantha if she liked that pseudonym or if she wanted another pseudonym.
Oh, well, that was sweet.
I love it. I love it. I just, and I got to tell you, in real life, we love Samantha. And Samantha, I mean, yeah, we love Samantha.
Yeah, well, everybody in that family were such beautiful people. Her father was such a wonderful figure for me too, even though it was brief, but he was such a wonderful person.
Yes. Yes. Her father and my father were actually best friends,
Hmm.
amazing men you wanted in your corner.
Oh,
So
absolutely,
again, that
absolutely.
and that whole family, I agree. That whole family from start to finish is fabulous. Um, kind of a question. Of course, I don't think much gets to you because you kind of play it off really well. I'm going to have to take lessons from you. What aspects of your life have been healed because and since you have written Poison into Medicine?
Um, yeah, this is a common, I guess, concept, a common question, that I get, and the reality is that I did go through much of the healing, if not all of the healing, before this.
Mm.
There was a
Oh,
small, there was, well, I wouldn't say a small part. There was a type of healing process that I had to go through after my father died that required a tremendous amount of contemplation, and that didn't really have to do so much with the book, but it was something that took several years after he died that I really had to come to terms with. And since then, I have become a stronger person. Um, I mean, so strong that I guess, I mean, breaking my leg, dealing with my mother's death, and these kinds of things, to the extent where it's just it didn't really break me, like when my father died. Um, so th- it feels good to have the story out there. It's kind of a strange feeling. Um, but overall, the purpose of the book wasn't so much for healing. Sure, certain parts were cathartic in writing it. I teared up and cried for a good portion of the book, but that's partly because of the person that I've become musically and artistically. It's that in those previous 10 years, I had learned a way to connect and put myself into something to that degree, to that when I'm speaking or when I'm playing music or when I'm writing, tears just start to flow. So, and I like that because it feels real to me.
Oh, definitely. So, in closing, Brandon, is there anything else that you want the audience to know or you want to share or say about your book?
Well, I guess just understand that the book was written with the best of intentions that I could have had, and that I do have, and it was like the most honest story that I could provide in words, and that if they want to read an honest story from struggle to triumph, then it's for them. I mean, the story certainly isn't for everybody, but I think that there are some things in there that everybody could take away from.
Right. I was actually going to say, I think it could be for just about anybody. And I was going to clarify that too, and I've said this before, that I think your book is relatable even for people who haven't been in a cult, because it's also a story just about personal growth and development. It's not just about your cult experience. It's very broad. So in that aspect, even somebody who hasn't been in a cult would be, I think, not only be interested in the story, but benefit from reading it and watching the way you deconstructed and reconstructed your thought processes. Because some people go through those deconstruction and reconstructions without having ever been in a cult for different reasons, for other traumas in their life.
Absolutely. I'll be diving into a little bit more of that, a lot more of that from an Eastern philosophical perspective in my next book.
So, we're not done hearing from Brandon.
No,
I love it.
Yeah, it's not quite half done yet, but it's certainly in the process, and I'm not sure how it'll go, but we'll see.
Well, that's good news. I like to hear that.
Well, Brandon, I would like to say this to you, and I know you hate it, because I watch your expressions and your body language, but I'm going to do it anyway, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm very proud of the man that you have become. I'm very proud of the man that you will be, and I'm very proud of you and the way that you so openly and honestly and easily opened your life for the world to read and be able to share in your struggles and most definitely your triumphs. I have known you for a couple of months now, and I'm going to tell you, I honestly it is such a privilege to have you in my life. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much for those kind words.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to put the picture of the book up here. It can be ordered on Amazon. And you can order a digital copy, is right? Correct? Am I correct?
Yeah, there are digital copies. There's also physical copies through Ingram Spark for book retailers, and I believe on Barnes and Noble it should also be available.
Okay, and I know it's backwards because I've got my camera here, but it's Poison into Medicine if you can't read that.
No, I can see it well.
Yeah, it's correct.
Oh, is it just backwards for me? Okay.
Yeah, but I would just like to let people really, really reiterate. Easy read. Cold, wet, rainy, snowing, outside. Snuggle up with this book. So I devoured it in what, Mel? A day and a half, 2 days? Something
like that. I don't know. You went much faster than me. And I'm just going to also say, I'm going to share something. I'm not a big reader. I don't read a lot of books, but this book captivated me. So even if you're not a reader, this book will draw you in. You will want to read it. I am not a big reader. I hate to admit that, because it's something I'm not super proud of about myself. I struggle with reading, but definitely this book is worth the time and the effort. And Brandon, we just want to thank you so much for coming on the show again, for sharing your book with us, for sharing your story with us, and I so appreciate that you've taken the time out of your busy schedule to schedule this and do this show with us again. And again, anybody out there, please, if you have any interest at all, you can find this book on Amazon. And what were the other sources, Brandon? Can you say that again?
Barnes & Noble and Ingram Spark. If it's not available on Barnes & Noble now, it will be soon.
Okay, and actually when I put the video up, I'm going to definitely put a link to the Amazon option on there, below in the comments. And then, Brandon, if you can find the other links and put those on there too, if you want to do that, that would be wonderful.
Sure, absolutely.
That way people will have other sources. Oh, thank you again, Brandon. It was wonderful speaking with you again.
Thank you so much. Lovely seeing you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.